Welcome back. You're with RT International. Now, racist trolls will be banned from football matches, the British Prime Minister has warned, after a wave of online abuse of black England players. Boris Johnson added that tech giants must face big fines too.
I utterly condemn and abhor the racist outpourings that we saw on Sunday night. There is a chance now to hold these internet companies to account and to make sure that they face fines running to 10% of their global income if they fail to take hate and racism off their platforms.
Well, 3 black footballers were hit with a barrage of racist comments on social media after missing penalties in the Euro 2020 final on Sunday, which Italy won. And opposition politicians do say that Johnson himself has failed to protect the players.
The Prime Minister has previously done no more than turn a blind eye to racism against our players. Warm words and gigantic England flags are no substitute for using the power he has to make it stop.
OK, well, we can talk about this further now with tonight's panel. Joining us, we have Bill Mew, a technology expert and privacy activist. Alongside him, Ellis Cashmore, who is a sociology professor at Aston University in the UK. And then also there on the far right, Marco Gasic, who is an international affairs commentator. And you are all very welcome as usual. Marco, if I could start with you. The UK government there is saying, look, it's going to hand out stadium bans and also fine tech companies. What do you make of the government's response to what happened to the England players?
So the question is whether these kind of measures are appropriate at all in terms of UK legislation, given the implications of such measures in terms of restricting other aspects of freedom of speech, which we would rather like to protect. So this could be the thin end of the wedge, where we find some issue where we all agree, where we all hate racism and so on, and we say, right, let's allow bans to take place, and then before we know it, bans become normal, and then bans become extended. And do we really want to see the principles on which this country was founded of freedom of speech just jettisoned that way and so easily?
Ellis, let's bring you in here. Do you feel there's been an overreaction by the government? Because, you know, surely they have to do something. You've got England players who've been racially abused online. It's very clear, the emojis of bananas and monkeys, everything that should be unacceptable. The government surely has to do something.
Well, it's an opportunity for the government, Johnson in particular, to win some favour, because he can now be justifiably seen as doing something, however futile that may be. I don't think he'll get very far with the likes of Facebook and Twitter, but it's a gesture, and he has to make that kind of gesture at a moment like this. The point I'd like to make, though, Andrew, is that we're all talking over the past 48 hours about football racism. We don't know who these people are who are spreading this racist stuff all around through memes and various conduits of social media. For all we know, they might hate football, they have no interest in sport whatsoever, but they're using football as a convenient platform for the expression of their vile views. So we shouldn't make the assumption, first of all, that this is a football phenomenon. They're using football. Now, how Johnson will attack that, I don't know. He, like everybody else, is assuming that the people who are doing it are football fans. And he's going to the likes of Facebook and saying, the buck stops with you. You have to do something about it. I can't see in practical terms what they actually can do. This is a question of killing the messenger, so to speak. But I'm sure we're going to hear some answers about what, in practical terms, they could possibly do.
OK, well, let's get that answer then, because I can see Bill readying himself there. Bill, what exactly can these tech companies do in terms of, you know, launching algorithms to stop racist abuse? Is it really that easy for an algorithm to pick up something that is racist? I mean, a human can read it and understand perhaps the tone of the comment and what it actually means, but could a computer actually do that?
Well, we are talking about social media firms that sell themselves on the accuracy of their targeting of adverts for the clients that they have. If they can detect racism with even a fraction of this precision and accuracy, then it should be very easy to identify the vast majority of those who are targeting racial abuse. It's not as if they're being particularly subtle in the way that they do it. Many of them are being really quite blatant. And therefore, talking about bans, as we've seen with the president or the former president in the United States, would be one step in that direction. But many of these social channels already have rules of this kind and should be enforcing them. It's also the case that there's been racist jeering and behaviour at football matches and online throughout the season. And it's not just in the last week or two with the penalty shootout and the England appearance at the Euros that this has started. And again, there are sanctions that could have been adopted all the way through the season. I think Mr. Johnson is somewhat reacting on the foot to a lot of pressure at this moment in time, having done very little before this.
Yeah, just the point that Ellis made, he was saying that, look, we still don't know who these people are as well that have made these comments. I mean, is that something that tech giants should be able to find out easily, or is it actually very easy to set up an account that's anonymous and nobody would ever know, you know, whether it's you that's tweeted it or not?
Well, we can identify exactly which accounts it is that are doing this, and banning those accounts, even on a temporary basis, is relatively straightforward. And there are already rules in place with most of the social media networks to do exactly this. I would question the degree to which they are enforcing their own rules, though. However, when it comes to actually identifying who is behind these anonymous accounts, this is an intractable situation. I mean, what we face is a level of abuse bordering on criminality, and also outright criminality with ransomware and other things across the internet, which we are in a poor position to police because it's very difficult to track these criminals down. OK,
Marco, do you think that the British government has a credibility issue here, given what the British Prime Minister has said about Muslims in the past, comparing them to letterboxes, comments we've heard from the Home Secretary too about jester politics in sport when players were taking the knee? There's been a huge backlash against the government. A lot of people are saying, well, look, you know, look at your own record. Do you think they're suffering here from their past actions?
Well, I think you've got Boris the journalist and Boris the Prime Minister, and journalists exercise journalistic license to produce compelling images for the time in which they write. The world's moved on since he wrote those, and so has he. He's in a different job with different responsibilities, and he's showing that he wants to be equal to the new tasks he's got. As for Priti Patel's view on taking the knee, I mean, this really gets to the nub of the matter. Taking the knee means different things to different people. For some, for many, perhaps for most, it's a sign of the battle against racism and for equality and to be commended. For others, perhaps might notice that the original, perhaps it kick-started in 2016 with an American footballer who said he couldn't really stand for the flag of a nation that oppressed black people. So in a sense, the flag, instead of being the focus of unity, becomes the focus of division in that moment. And perhaps there are other ways of expressing opposition to racism. Perhaps there could be another symbol. Perhaps there could be other ways of doing it. We're in the middle of a long battle against a centuries or thousands years, millennia-old enemy, and it's not going to be won in a day. To accelerate the battle or the challenge of the battle against racism and try and speed it up runs the risk of creating accidents like we see the other day, because I seriously wonder if Gareth Southgate felt compelled to have this agenda when he chose his penalty takers, and so he chose he put people on in the last minute who had not played the game at all until then, hadn't experienced the adrenaline. The whole thing was to them just a sudden experience. And he added to the challenge of winning a trophy after half a century on behalf of England, he added the challenge of solving the problem of racism in society. And then he put those two massive problems onto the shoulders of a 19-year-old boy and a 21-year-old at 23 and said, solve it for them.
Maybe we could debate whether he actually went through that thought process in the couple of minutes that he had, but I certainly take your point. Ellis,
I wonder if he thought it earlier.
OK. Ellis, just from your point of view, I know you're a keen sports fan. Do you think sport can do any more to help itself in solving these problems of racism? Because we hear politicians talk about it, hear fans talk about it, hear that tech companies should do more. But what about sport itself?
Well, sport itself, in the generic sense, I don't think has a problem of racism. We see expressions here and there, but not so much in football. You know, it's cleaned up its act in the main. The real problem, I think, lies in Eastern Europe, in Hungary, in Russia, in Ukraine. This is where the stadiums are filling up with fans who feel that they can get away with anything with impunity. And UEFA isn't really clamping down on those areas. I think in Western Europe, in North America, Asia and Africa, I think that football doesn't have a problem of racism, which is not to say, by the way, that I've got my head stuck in the sand and I'm pretending racism doesn't exist. It does exist in British society, no question about that. But I don't think it's particularly prevalent in sports, as it seems to be, because this is a media-constructed narrative, Andrew.
OK, well, just on that, I mean, players feel very strongly they have to, you know, play every week. They claim they are getting abused. Yeah. That's why they're taking the knee. But
well, where they get the abuse from? They're getting it off social media, not from the crowd.
Well,
and perhaps
from the crowd too at times.
Players.
Yeah. OK, but I certainly take your point. Just lastly, Bill, coming to you, because we've only got a couple of minutes left. I just wondered, from your position, do you feel as though tech giants are the whipping boys often for societal problems?
They can be convenient whipping boys, but they're also partially to blame because they're not enforcing their own code of conduct. If they were, there would be a number of people who would be banned, but you can't just point the finger at tech giants because football in the UK has football banning orders, which it's not using and it's not enforcing particularly widely. UEFA could be enforcing rules against some of the football associations in Eastern Europe, which they're not doing anything about. There are a wide number of different sanctions that do exist in different situations. Very few of these sanctions are being used. There is little enforcement, and therefore there's going to be little chance of this coming to an end.
OK, look, I've been told we've got a couple of minutes left, so let's go back to you, Marco. I mean, from what you've heard there, if the government could do one thing, let's just suggest, and you could suggest it to them, what would it be?
I think it would be not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yes, tech companies can use AI to police the internet, as it were, but to produce legislation banning freedom of speech, as I say, is the thin end of the wedge. It's the one thing I wouldn't do. I think it has to stay calm here. This is one moment. Why we have no reason, as Ellis said, to big this story up. Most people are opposed to racist diatribes on the internet, and most people don't indulge in them. And therefore, we shouldn't make this problem into something bigger than it is in order to generate media inches. Let's first of all stay calm, congratulate that team on a brilliant performance. Saka played brilliantly. Rashford only came on for a while. Sancho, but they're all good. They're all a success story. They're role models. Let's keep them that way, and let's congratulate the team rather than demonise the country.
Ellis, are we in a difficult situation because we do have very high-profile players that do attract a lot of attention, a lot of racial abuse, as we've seen? They demand action. The question is, what action would be proportionate?
Sorry, Andrew, I'm going to interrupt you, my friend, because we're saying there is a lot of racial abuse. We don't know.
Well, if you look at their accounts that they have received personally.
Let me qualify what I've just said, because it is a hell of a statement, I know. It could be, for all we know, a dozen kids who come from the kind of backgrounds where they're bred to be racist, taught to be racist, encouraged to be so. So they grow up with these thoughts in their head, and they want to spout that bile as far and as wide as they possibly can. So they choose this convenient method of going on social media. Suddenly it goes viral, and it appears to be a problem of monstrous proportions. It might not be. We simply don't have evidence to prove one way or another the scale of this problem. What we do know is that in everyday society, racism has been diminishing.
OK, look, on that point, we're going to have to wrap it up. But my thanks to you all. A great discussion. That was Bill Mew there, technology expert, Ellis Cashmore in the middle, sociology professor at Aston University in the UK, and Marco Gasic, an international affairs commentator. Thank you. And thank you, as ever, for watching. We're back again in half an hour.